that's my favorite thing. I don't really want to be the person to tell you what everything I'm doing means. That kind of scares me, because then everything I do would have to mean something. I want to create things and invite you to question them with me, because half the time I'm doing stuff I don't really even know what I'm doing. Even when I think I do, there's always the afterthought or the moments after where I'm like noticing that, that also reminds me of this other thing that I did, or why did I go with that color? Like, why did I take the eyes away? These decisions. Painting as a medium for me is all about decisions. You know, there's the whole idea about time and being able to stop it and start it and have that now go forever, that, you know, the nows that you create when you're painting. But it's all about these decisions, and those decisions, they just stay there and you can just leave them, and those decisions that you make can affect culture, and can affect culture on like an even micro level of somebody's thoughts about themselves or about you or the world around them. So I just really like to leave it open to that possibility, instead of like directing it to something that I am saying, this is what it is, don't ask me again. This is what it is, you know. That's, you know, the work lives longer when it's like open in that way, you know. Yeah. Let's see, let me lock in.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you some questions.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Okay. Hey, what's up?
Hey. So do you remember the first painting or artwork that you ever saw that made you decide to do this? Like, what got you into painting?
Oh, what got me into painting? I think I'm just like a Picasso fan. I think what really got me into the headspace of wanting to paint was knowing that Picasso just painted as though he was breathing. And I started to see painting not as just like each individual painting, which I also love and like think that's great. It's painting as a practice. And then that kind of intrigued me to be a practitioner of painting as well, because I feel like you kind of like produce a sort of mythology around yourself as a painter. And with each painting that you create, you're kind of like charging that mythology and like building that world. So Picasso to me is just like super myth, and I think, yeah, he probably would be the person that kind of got me thinking about painting in this way.
Next question is just like the landscape of the art world right now. It's been fracturing for a long time. There are all these like people saying painting is dead, sculpture is dead, this is dead, and like technology is changing obviously the way that we're experiencing art. The tension between just, you can not go to any gallery shows and you can see everything on your phone.
Wow.
You can go and see a painting in person. That's something that we're trying to combat to a certain degree. I'm curious because your work has a synthesis between being very traditional painting processes, but you also synthesize the digital realms into it in a way that not a lot of people are not doing openly. Going back to that, to the elitist aspects of the art world, a lot of artists are hiding their digital processes or hiding that they're working with AI, and you're being quite open and transparent about your process and about your inspiration from digital realms. So I guess my question is, how does your practice incorporate the two somewhat opposing or seemingly opposing realms of physical, traditional painting and being extremely online?
I think a key element of that, my practice, is my understanding of art history. Funny enough, you know, I went to art school, but I dropped out. But the most important classes that I did were like my art history classes. I just kind of understood immediately that for me to become a better artist, or even to know really what I want to do, I have to kind of understand the things that happened before me. So when I started painting, just like in the process of just making any art that I'm making, I'm always trying to think in terms of conversation, what movement, what artist, what kind of expression, what frequency am I in dialogue with, and how am I adding to that conversation? And now we're at a point that's like hyper digital, and part of my theory and philosophy about all of this is we're at a point now where our physical world is mirroring very closely our digital world.
There's a collapse between the physical world and the digital lives. Like people used to have double lives, essentially like an online life and, and an IRL life, but everything's breaking down and merging.
Everything's breaking down, everything's merging, everything's becoming one. It's kind of like that theory, what's it, the singularity or something. It doesn't stop at just the technology itself. I think a big part that we forget is the life that we're actively in becoming, you know, very reflective of the other side as well, and not just inside out.
So would you say you're using traditional practices coming from painting tradition to capture a real life or societal moment of collapse between the digital and the physical identities that we've been kind of shouldering in between?
Yes, the practices insofar as just like traditional methods of like image making, like painting and illustration, but my definition of what a practice is also expanding and understanding that a big part of painting or image making is seeing sort of the silhouette or the composition conceptually and working with those things as a medium as well, and that being a part of the practice. So when you play with certain ideas of like gender or politics, these things kind of become additional textures that you can work with. And I think right now it's an extremely powerful thing to work with because we're often looking at the collide of these things and not really being able to distinguish whether it's one thing or the other.
So maybe without moving, pick like two works that you can talk about the process, and especially like if we can relate it back to the digital physical synthesis in your process.
Okay.
That would be great. And I think that collectors and people in general, like they like to hear about what kind of paint you're using. If you want to share, you can also keep your trade secrets. But anything, you know, that, and about the story behind the painting.
Well, so when we look at like, you know, let me show you like some of the art that I feel like reflects maybe the digital and physical synthesis. You know, so this is like, this image was a meme of like Naruto on the bed, and he's like on his stomach and his butt's like really big, you know. But so that's like directly from internet meme culture. And then this background, I'm super inspired by like abstract expressionist artists, especially like the ones kind of later in that whole movement, like in the 90s, and the Germans as well. But like de Kooning, his emotional expressive backgrounds, I always think about that and I'm like, it's the truest form of like just painting to me, just kind of putting the colors, the movements, the gestures there. I think he's like the essence of what a true painter is. So putting that to the background and then layering this like meme of like Naruto with like his butt. Oh, and I added like a fart. So in the original meme, there wasn't a fart. So I took clip art of like a fart, or I think I sampled a Looney Tunes image of a fight. And then I kind of like sampled also like clip art of like some parts of like a fart. And then I kind of in Photoshop just made it like, just made it this thing. So a lot of sampling of imagery and like blending of like painting practices, and within the practice of painting, for example, there's wet on wet. So wet on wet to create this sort of like texture, and it's like unique to the practice of painting as well. This Andy Warhol one, literally Andy Warhol, I never seen him paint a hot dog before. You know, I've never seen like an Andy Warhol hot dog, but I have this thing in my head where I feel like artists' identities are a medium of its own, and Warhol was the first person, in my opinion, that kind of like really put that to the forefront. What does it mean? What does Andy Warhol even mean? We all have like an idea of what that is. It's kind of like a symbol, but what happens when you just put his name, his signature next to anything? It just seems like Warholian. So this is a clip art image that I painted of a hot dog, and then I just put his signature here, and it's like, it just feels Warholian because of the associations there, but also with the background, it's very much in reference to some of the portraits that he did with his brushwork, so I was trying to mimic that. So yeah, I think associations like that of like two disparate things, it's like a very digital culture thing. Like two.
So you take kind of like like the way that the concept of identity was transmuted into brand, like in the rise of like social media and basically like the iPhone. So you take these different, like these new forms of identities, and you juxtapose them and remix them and kind of collage them in a way to show the absurdity.
Yeah, the absurdity, sure.
And the beauty and the horror.
But it's almost like, honestly, it's like a self-portrait at the same time, because in that process and doing that, you're kind of revealing elements of your experience with those symbols as well. You know, it's like, I don't know, like something like this. It's not really the best example, but I'll just talk about it real quick. I grew up playing Pokemon all the time. Pokemon was huge for me. So I have, with Typhlosion in mind, like a kind of experience of him being like really powerful, and I was also really fascinated by the theory of like mutation and like double-headed creatures, you know, like stuff like that. So the childhood version of me would be thrilled to see something like this, where you're taking a character that's like in pop culture or in like in a cartoon, and kind of just like creating a new kind of identity and language conceptually through that, where now he's double-headed, because he had like one head before. Or even like, say this tung 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 sahor, you know, this is a pretty good example of that, because earlier or in the middle of this year, Italian brain rot was like all over the place, all over TikTok, Instagram Reels, you know. It's just these weird AI creatures that just like run around and like they're always like battling. And Tung 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 Sahur was like a big one, because he just is like some random stick holding a stick. I don't know. So painting this guy is like really funny, because, you know, I try to do it in a style that felt like really painterly, and putting this character only born like through this like brain rot internet culture into the context of this medium, it just kind of like expands the identity of Tung 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 Sahur in this weird way. It's like the more iterations and versions you kind of put any sort of identities through, that identity grows, because it's kind of entering into new territory. It's going beyond the periphery of what people's associations were of it initially. So,
you know what I'm realizing too about your work now as you're talking about it?
Yeah.
Like something I often think about is how like when things happen online, when they go viral or people have their moment,
Yeah.
it just erases. Like there's this like sense of erasure.
Right.
Because there's no physical evidence to anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
So like a lot of times, like a meme or whatever, like no one remembers it like a month later or what. But these experiences online are real.
Yeah, they're real.
And they're bringing people together, and they're impacting reality. They're impacting day-to-day interactions. They're powerful, but they just get erased. It's the way like apps like update their interface, and then you just don't remember what it ever looked like.
Yeah.
And in a way, you're creating almost like physical imprints of these like this other dimension that we all share.
Exactly, and that goes to this point that I was mentioning to Anne and Josh earlier. Is I have this theory, I call it the orange light theory. That means that when the orange lights go on, that means like the Armageddon comes, people, you know, are gonna have on their walls, you know, like these things that represented their time on this earth, their experience, you know, like as a person during that era. I think about where will these paintings end up? Like this Playboy Cardi music painting with like this weird kind of figure that I just made up. Somebody's gonna have this on their wall when everything's blowing up and the orange lights are going, and maybe the last thing they turn around and see is this. And I think about like what they're thinking, and it's like maybe they'll be like, oh yeah, that's it right there. This painting kind of captures what it meant largely to be alive at this time, you know, while the orange lights are just like covering, flooding that room. They look back and they see something like this and they're like, that's it, you know, and they have this moment of before they go away. Or if somebody finds something like this 100 years from now, 200 years from now, will they be like, will they learn about like what it must have been like to be alive at this time? I think about it like these cave paintings also. Like when that guy did that cave painting in that cave with the horse or the bull, or even like the hands, right? That's kind of what painting to me is, capturing now. Painting is like all about like now. As soon as you start the painting, it's interesting. It's like now, whenever you're painting, it's now. And whenever you stop, all the nows are just there. And they're just there, and you can stop, and then that's just now forever. Until you decide maybe to add more now and keep painting now and now and now. And then as soon as you stop again, all those nows just exist on this canvas, and it will always tell that story of what it is to be there right now.